All righty. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Blue Review. We are all here. We can all hear each other. Guys,
Look
how
at
we
that.
doing today?
Look at that. It's only 2 minutes late, much better than the 10 minutes late yesterday. So we're getting better. It's getting better each time. And I like the open.
Got the
I
intro
love
open
that.
in and
Yeah.
everything. I know. That
I
kind of took
know.
me by surprise. I was like, oh, whoa, right.
Me too. I'm like, wow, look at that intro. That's crazy.
That's right. Every day. We're getting better every day. That's all we can do.
Improvements.
That's right.
Yes,
So, as
sir.
always, the
Yes,
Blue
sir.
Review is sponsored by LAX. Hire LAX creates life-changing opportunities for Los Angeles residents. And check this out. I don't have the read on hand, but I'm doing this off the memory. For more information, guys, you can check out Hire LAX on eventbrite.com. That's Hire LAX on eventbrite.com.
All right.
So, guys,
That's a pro right there. Look at you.
Blue Review, you know I care about it. All right. So the Dodgers bounce back 11-2. They win, and we saw some impressive outings from, of course, the birthday boy, Freddie, Lance Lynn, and Kyle Hertz. So I'll pass this along to you guys. How are we feeling about last night's game?
So for me, Clinton, I think two things were the biggest thing. Actually, we can do all three of those guys that you mentioned. Let's start with Freddie Freeman, and then you can go off of it also, Clinton. But let's go with Freddie Freeman first, because Freddie Freeman is doing something that is absolutely incredible. First of all, yes, it was his birthday, and he went 4 for 5, and he had another double. He had a home run. He was fantastic. But the fact of the matter is, he has 55 doubles, and the major league record is 67. It was made in like 1931, and he has 18 games to get 13 doubles to break it. He has 55 in 140 some games. He can actually, it's possible that he can do this, and that would be pretty great for him specifically. But if he can do it, that's 13, but against some bad teams, Detroit, Colorado, it's really pretty open in Colorado. Get a couple here, a couple there. It's possible.
Okay, let's start there. Number one, you said he's got what? The record 55. Is how many?
67.
And it was set in 1931?
1931.
Do you know what ballparks looked like in 1931? Like, they were completely different beasts. Like, getting that many doubles in one of those cavernous yards in America in 1931 was not nearly as impressive, I think, as what Freddie Freeman is doing right now. I say that because a couple of weeks ago, I went down to Rickwood Field in Birmingham, which they used to play at, and, like, the walls were like 450 feet away. Like, I'm like, what
You're
the hell was
sprinting all the time.
It was ridiculous. I was like, you guys must have been hitting doubles constantly because everybody was just running all over the outfield on a regular basis. So for me, like, the number is one thing, but there's no world in which some record set in the 30s that involves legging out 2 baggers I'm going to take more seriously than somebody doing it now when ballparks are way different and players are way better. Not that, I really take anything seriously pre-integration in baseball anyway. But, like, yeah, Freddie Freeman pretty much owns this record for me in my mind as it exists right now.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's pretty good. And Parker, you're still on the air.
Parker on the air. The show,
you're talking to
5 minutes in, we're already off the rails because DeAndre walked in with his breakfast and we can all hear it.
He doesn't know to go on mute. It's your first day, Parker. I understand.
Anyway.
Hey, things happen. It's live.
Yes.
We'll do it live.
We'll do it live. Yes, go ahead.
Let's move forward. And then, so congratulations. Happy birthday, Freddie Freeman, and all that. Kyle Hurt is the next one I want to talk about. I want to save Lance Lynn for the end. Kyle Hurt is the one I want to talk about next, where he was really, really impressive. And you, Clinton Yates, when you saw that he was coming up, said immediately you wanted him to be the opener. This dude went 1, 2, 3 against Tatis, Soto, and Machado in 9 pitches, and then struck out the side the next inning after that. It was all done in 24 pitches. That was extremely, extremely impressive.
It was efficient. It was impressive. And for those of you who are watching this show or listening to this show, like, bear with me here, because part of what we're going to do is, I've been talking about this for the last couple of days, is what would this rotation look like if you went to a modified situation? And at some point, that means you have to figure out who the actual players would be, what they would actually do. Do I think, and trust me, I have no inside knowledge of this. This is literally just me speculating, having a baseball mind. Could I live in a world where you had a guy that opened multiple games and that was his job? I think I could. Like, what's
could
the
go-
difference between having somebody who's a closer and having somebody who's an opener? It's just a little bit of a longer form of relief, but it's just not relief. And when I saw that he was going to come up and he was going to talk, I said, you know what? If you're going to be dealing with an opener, your freshest guy might be the one that you want to do it in terms of matchups, and in terms of just kind of a lack of fear. You know, it's one thing to close a game at home against the Padres in September. You know, it's another thing to do it in October against the Braves. And I'm not saying he can't do it. I just mean that, like, I feel like if I had to pick a candidate where I thought that person would be good for this, I think I would pick somebody who was younger rather than somebody who was a veteran.
See, and I think you're right too, because it's the same thing. If you're pitching if you're pitching one inning in the 8th inning 2 days in a row, what's the difference between pitching an inning in the beginning 2 days in a row? And in the division series, he could possibly even do it in every single game if he's good enough, because there's 3 days off. And he goes 2 games, day off, game off, game. And like, there's plenty of time off for him to actually rest his arm at the same time. So I think that's more than possible. I think the only one I would not want him to open for is Bobby Miller.
Okay.
But maybe, and if Lance Lynn continues to look like he did last night, maybe not Lance Lynn, but otherwise anybody else.
I mean, well, here's the thing. Lance Lynn is definitively not who I would want as an opener. Like, no. Lance Lynn, to
I don't
me,
want to be in the game.
But to me, Lance Lynn is the kind of guy that I would have an opener for. I would disagree with you on that, simply because I just feel that he gives up. When he's on, he's okay. He can eat innings. You know what I mean? And again, that's important here because the number of pitchers available is in question. I would have an opener for Lance Lynn. And even though I thought he pitched okay yesterday, he's the kind of guy that I think would be the perfect example of somebody who you don't trust enough to start, but you definitely might want to have him in there for a couple of innings, rather many innings as possible.
Just to wrap it up on Kyle Hurt, I liked what I saw from him last night, but I also want to just pump the brakes just a little bit. He came in, and this was the first one. I need to see him do it a couple more times. Too many times we see dudes come up from Double-A and just go crazy and look really good in that first outing, and then they don't hold it. Emmett Sheehan had a no-hitter through like 5 innings or whatever it was.
Yeah.
The first time he came up, and then kind of went the other way. So I just want to pump the brakes a little bit. I'm hoping that it's going to stay good, but just ease up. Let's see him do it a few more times, and then we can start talking about constant start.
Okay, but I mean,
that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's just me, but it's also halfway through September. We don't have these kind of options in terms of just taking all kinds of time. Like, yeah, great. You don't want to overhype it, but at some point, it's going to have to matter because you're bringing guys up for – this isn't a vanity project anymore. You're not just bringing guys up to say, oh, look at what we've got. Oh, let's see if we can mix people in. This is a need-based situation. And so when you're in that scenario, I feel that, yeah, you're just going to have to ramp the pressure up a little bit more because it matters. Not in terms of what the game results are, like you said yesterday. Wins and losses at this stage are not necessarily what we're talking about, but performance is. If it results in a win or a loss, that's a different matter. But I think the microscope is pretty much on everybody who's on this team right now, particularly those who are armed.
Yeah, and he just has to me, he has to prove himself for the last 18 games. If he is enough, if he does enough and he stays just like what he pitched last night and it looks like that, yes, postseason roster, we figure out what his role is. Opener, I don't care what it is, but we need that dynamic pitchers that have the power that he has. So I would like to see if he does it, great. I just want to pump the brakes for a minute.
I can't stop thinking about the possibilities of an opener-only pitcher, like what that gig would look like.
Sergio Romo kind of did it when he was with Tampa Bay. He was always the opener, and he got through it. But then there's really not many dudes that have done that specifically.
No, because the need is very rarely required. I mean, it's a very gimmicky sort of thing in general, but very rarely have you seen a team need to go to it or even admit that they need to go to it kind of thing. You know what I mean? Because it is so unconventional. But in the playoffs, like, you do what you got to do. It's tournament baseball in many ways. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's not the same. It's not the same setup at all.
No, and you need to get 27 outs. However you get those 27 outs, that's all that matters to me. So if you needed him, Kyle Hurt to be pitching, getting in those first 3, and then you can move on, great. Because usually the top, especially if you can do what's the top of the order for Atlanta? It's Acuna,
Olsen's third.
Olsen's third. Who's second? is it Albies? I don't know.
Probably Albies. Yeah, hold on.
Yeah, I'm not sure who it is, but that's a
yeah.
dynamic 1-2-3, no matter what's going on up there, and especially with Acuna, because he sets the table for them. If you can get Acuna out, that makes it's easier. They have the most. I think they have. I'm not sure if it's all time yet, but they have the most home runs in the first inning of anybody, or the second most of all time.
Yeah, and they lead the league in first inning runs too. So
yeah, that's what I mean.
It's critical. I mean, and you don't want. Here's the thing: you don't want to necessarily openly admit, maybe not admit, but it's tough to talk about it. Like, oh, we're preparing our entire post. Rather, the entirety of the rest of the season is preparing for the Braves in the postseason.
I don't care. It is,
but yeah, it totally is. I mean, like that's just the reality of the situation. Like they're the best team, they've got the best lineup, and you're going to have to face them in order. I mean,
you can't overlook the DS. You can't overlook the DS, but you're looking at them.
I don't think you overlook the DS, but I do think that that's where your mind has to be if you're the Dodgers right now, for sure.
Completely. All right, so let's talk a little about Lance Lynn. But before we do, if you're on the YouTube chat, I see a bunch of people out here. If you're on the YouTube chat, this is live. So if you ask questions, we will be able to answer your questions live. We try to do that towards the end of the show. We have about another 7 minutes or so. So if you have any questions, start putting them on the chat, and I will get to them.
Including what's DeAndre eating for lunch today, since we got a nice visual of that bag when he was on his way into studio.
He doesn't care. Live shows, DeAndre doesn't matter. He just walks into studios, walks right past people. Who cares?
That was great.
I love DeAndre. He's amazing. But anyway, Lance Lynn last night. I'll ask you first, Clinton. Did Lance Lynn change anything for you with how he pitched last night? He did give up a home run. He gave up one home run to Tatis. It was a solo. That's kind of what you hope for. But is he a guy that you can expect 5-6 innings, 2 runs? I know he had 7 last night, but in the postseason, 5-6 innings, 2 runs. Is that possible?
The problem with Lance Lynn is that the homers in themselves aren't an issue in terms of the runs necessarily. It's an issue because in the playoffs, when people hit home runs, those are game changers from a simple momentum standpoint. That's the real issue with Lynn, is when people are constantly leaving the yard, the morale element is as big as anything. It'd be one thing if he was constantly loading the bases, or guys were singling him to death. That's not the kind of pitcher that he is. And so, yeah, I think you can get plenty of innings out of him. This is what I'm saying. I think he has to be on the postseason roster for no other reason than he's a veteran, and maybe you can't trust him, but the problem is the home runs, because those are game changers in ways that you can't take back in terms of how it changes the mentality in any given game at any given time. So I don't love it, but again, what other options do you really have if you're talking about the Dodgers when it comes to starting pitching? And even if you do go to a goofy opener bullpen game set up every single time, again, name me these pitchers who are going to be pitching these innings, because otherwise, until then, I don't think anybody's in a position to say that somebody is or is not going to be on a playoff roster.
It's pretty much. It's the only people that are certain, completely certain, are Bobby Miller and Ryan Pepio. That's it. I mean, Kershaw's not even certain. I don't know if he's ever going to pitch again.
Right.
He's supposed to pitch on Saturday, but that got pushed back. Does another one get pushed back? You just never really know what's going to happen with this. If you're not hitting 90 miles an hour with your velocity, not even hitting it, there's something going on with your arm, and you're just not the same pitcher.
Yeah.
No,
I get. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say he's a pitcher and not a power pitcher. Like he pitches the spot, so it's different. It's like Greg Maddux. You want to pitch the certain spots, and I know you can do that, but you need some power.
I'm trying to think if I would. I mean, the real question is would you leave him off the playoff roster? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and
if you have to,
but I mean, can you afford to? You know what I mean?
No.
Like, or do you take the chance and just say, maybe he'll dial it up, maybe whatever juice is in the tank, whatever Nas he can hit for the playoffs. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe that's what it's worth. Or are you putting yourself at too much risk by just exposing him to that in general to start a series? Again, Dave Roberts is dealing with, as is the front office, major actual questions going into the playoffs, and not just ones that are matters of convenience or injury availability. They are all related in ways that are, I don't get paid enough to deal with that, and I'm kind of glad I don't at this point because it is not an easy question to answer.
So, but let's think about this. If Kershaw doesn't make the postseason roster, is his career done?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, but that's where the question becomes. If you say, Kersh, if you can't hit 90, you can't throw in the postseason, and he says, okay, I'll take another offseason to see if I can get my stuff back. It might be one of those. What's your boy's name? We took $1 million just to try out for the Dodgers and never ended up making the team. Like Cole Hamels, I think it was.
Oh yeah, Cole Hamels. Yeah.
Like we could be looking at one of those situations next year, which was the weirdest thing in the world, by the way, when they did that. And
well, he did it with I think the Padres, and he bounced all around doing that.
But what I'm saying is that, like, if you don't have the stuff to pitch in the regular season, how do you have the stuff to pitch in the postseason? And if you're that old and you don't have the stuff to pitch in the postseason, what are you doing in the bigs? Like, it's not, I don't say that dismissively. Don't get me wrong. This is not a dismission of Clayton Kershaw's career. It's just, I think the self-analysis for him is as in play as it's ever been because the Dodgers aren't in a position where they owe him anything anymore in terms of just, letting him do whatever he wants to do.
So would you do this, let's say I know there was other pitchers that have done this. I can't think of, right. I think Roger Clemens may have done it, or Kurt Schilling or somebody, but would you let Kershaw start his season June 1st?
I would. Yeah, I would do that. That is something I would consider. But
don't even worry about the first couple months.
No, just start after the All-Star break or whatever.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? I wouldn't mind that. I mean, the question is whether or not he would want to do that, and that's where things get kind of tricky is guys like to be locked in. They have mental calendars of when things work. Like
especially him.
Yeah. Like what would he even be doing those previous months? You know what I'm saying? Like you wish that you could just say, well, if we only get 100 innings out of Kershaw, we want them to be during this time. But the problem is typically the way that it works is that, well, you get 100 innings because he starts off at a certain time of, it doesn't all just add up.
You need to ramp up.
Yeah,
you have a ramp up time. If you ever coming off of spring training and you have to ramp up, and then you have to that ramp up time. If he starts in June, it doesn't actually get going until July, and there's a whole bunch of other things that go in there. Yeah,
it's not as interchangeable as you might want it to be, considering what the skill set is and what's available.
Right, but those are options. All right, we only got a minute left. Let's see what we have here. What's going on, Parker? What do we have?
Yes.
Again, pump the brakes. Let's see him a few more times. He got 18 games. All right. I think he will.
Okay.
So let's hold.
Fair enough.
Hold off.
Oh yeah. What? I thought we were going to do a full recap of this. Where is Funchy?
I don't know where he is. He's not here. But it's. we know where Funchy is.
He was asked the question, can he name two Dodgers? And he said, yes, Mookie Betts and what's his name? One of the greatest replies in the history of this station regarding the Dodgers. I could not believe it when I saw that on Beto's social. It was fantastic.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
What's his name?
But they got to meet they got to meet Fernando Valenzuela.
Yeah. No, that's always fun.
That was pretty cool.
By the way, Fernando is an extremely accessible dude. For anybody who's ever been to the Dodgers press box, like he's just there. Like he's a guy. Like he's not some, he's not the kind of person that's gonna, wave you off if you ask to shake his hand or whatever. Which is one of the coolest parts about him is that he is, just a personality that everybody can, love and enjoy and meet. It's great. It's fun.
So the question is to you, real quick, Greg.
Yep.
Did Mace leave before the 5th inning?
So that's a misnomer.
There's no chance he left after there's no chance he stayed till the 7th.
No, absolutely. Steve Mason stays till the end of every single Dodger game. He leaves at of every single baseball game, he stays till the end. Of every single football game, he stays till the end. Of every single basketball game, he leaves at halftime.
Really?
Yeah, it's so weird. Why basketball he leaves at halftime? I have no idea. But he stays to the last pitch of every game, and he stays to the time is off the clock in football.
That's
weird.
fascinating.
Wow.
He's an interesting character.
YouTube chat.
Yeah.
Now you know.
Now you know.
All right. Well, this has been the Blue Review. Thank you, Greg Berman and Clinton Yates, for joining us. This has been Parker Bell We will catch you next time. Thank you, LAX.
Hey, guys. Oh, wait.
See ya.
I got to do my thing. There we go.
Oh yeah, you do the. I don't.
There
I
it
need
is.
one of those.
There it is.